John, chapter 13. Love them to the end. The chicken had gone cold in the grease 40 minutes ago. Bennett had cooked for 8, 5 had shown up, and nobody had touched the second half of the skillet. A wet yellow dish rag hung limply over the handle of the oven door. Out on the deck, through the sliding glass, the yellow porch light was fighting a losing battle against the Oregon coastal dusk and an army of moths hitting the screen. Dina didn't wait for Bennett to clear the bones. She had her Bible laid out flat over a grease smudge next to the butter dish, the binding split at Isaiah, a faded grocery receipt sticking out of Leviticus. 13, she said. Trent was still scraping a dried bit of crust off his fork with his thumbnail. Are we actually doing this right now? The grease hasn't even solidified. Leave the pan, Trent, Willa murmured from the corner of the bench. She was picking a loose thread on her sweater cuff, knees pulled tight to her chest. Let her read. Before the feast of the Passover, Dina read, her voice level, completely unbothered by the fork scraping. Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Wait, Trent cut in. Which end? Dina stopped, her finger pinned under end. What? Is it to the end, like until Friday? Or to the end like all the way, max capacity? Does it change what you do with your fork? Bennett asked from the sink. He hadn't turned the faucet on. He was just leaning against the laminate counter with a dish towel tucked into his jeans waist, looking tired. I'm just asking. It reads different if he's counting down the clock versus dumping the tank. It's both, Willa said without looking up from her cuff. He doesn't pick one. Keep going, Dina. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God. Stop right there, Trent said. His fork dropped onto the ceramic with a sharp clatter. That's the hinge right there. Read the hands part again. Dina let out a small breath through her nose. Given all things into his hands. Right, so he's got the whole board. Absolute authority, keys to the engine, whatever you want to call it. And what does he do with his hands the second he gets them full? He doesn't settle the score with Rome. He doesn't fix Judas. He grabs a rag. It's not a rag, it's a linen towel, Willa muttered. Same difference. If somebody hands me the deed to the company, I'm not scrubbing the staff bathroom. It doesn't make sense. It feels theatrical. It wasn't theatrical for Peter, Ray spoke up. She was sitting with both elbows on the table, her sleeves pushed up to her elbows, dark circles under her eyes. Peter hated it. It's the exact feeling you get when your boss comes over at lunch and tries to scrape your dirty plate into the trash for you. You panic. You grab the plate back. Don't touch that, sit down, you're making everyone in the room feel gross. Because it is gross, Trent insisted, gesturing toward Bennett's sink. If Bennett got down on his knees right now on the linoleum and asked for my boots, I'd kick him in the chest. It's too intimate. You don't let people do that. Except Jesus doesn't ask for permission, Dina said. She picked the verse right back up, voice cutting across the room. Rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Silence dropped into the dining room. Down the hall, the refrigerator hummed, kicked off, and left the quiet heavy. He comes to Simon Peter, Dina continued, who said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered him, What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand. Peter said to him, You shall never wash my feet. See? Trent pointed. Never. That's a sane man talking. Jesus answered him, Dina read, If I do not wash you, you have no share with me. And there goes Peter, Bennett said quietly from the counter. Yep, Ray agreed, a faint grimace on her mouth. 0 to 100, the man has no middle gear. Once he hears he might get left out, he wants a whole shower. Lord, not my feet only but also my hands and my head, Dina read, her cadence catching the absurdity of it. Jesus said to him, The one who has bathed does not need to wash, except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean but not every one of you. For he knew who was to betray him. That was why he said, Not all of you are clean. Willa shifted on the bench, her voice dropping an octave. He knew while he was holding Judas's heel. Think about that. He had Judas's calluses in his wet hands, wiping the street dirt off the arch of his foot, knowing 5 minutes later that foot was walking out the door to cash in. Trent squirmed against his chair. You don't know he washed Judas's feet. Who was in the room, Trent? Willa countered, looking at him straight on. Was Judas there or not? He was there, Bennett said. Then his feet were in the basin, Willa said flatly. That's the part that makes your stomach turn. It's not the humility with Peter. Peter's just loud and clumsy. It's the towel on the traitor. Dina tapped the paper with 2 fingers to pull them back. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments, and resumed his place, he said to them, Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. I went to a foot washing service once, Trent said, leaning back. Youth group in 08. It was all acoustic guitar and people crying in the dark. Felt very deep, but everybody washed the feet of their best friend. The kid who bullied me sat in the back row and washed his buddy's feet. Nobody crossed the aisle. That's because copying it isn't the point, Ray said. Not the choreography anyway. He just said, a servant is not greater than his master. If the guy who owns the room does the dirty work, none of you get to act like royalty. Dina didn't let them camp there. She moved right into the dark middle of the passage. I am not speaking of all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. He who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. I am telling you this now, before it takes place, that when it does take place, you may believe that I am he. She paused. Outside, a heavy gust of wind rattled the screen door against its aluminum frame. After saying these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit, and testified, Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. That's the wildest part of the whole chapter, Bennett said, taking a step toward the table. They didn't look at Judas. If my business partner was about to embezzle the payroll, and somebody said one of us was dirty, I'd know who had shifty eyes. But none of them pointed. They looked at each other like, is it me? Because Judas looked completely normal, Trent said, defending his earlier logic. He held the money bag. You don't give the petty cash to the guy who looks like a snake. You give it to the guy who balances the spreadsheet. One of his disciples, whom Jesus loved, was reclining at table at Jesus' side, Dina read, ignoring the crosstalk. So Simon Peter motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So that disciple, leaning back against Jesus, said to him, Lord, who is it? That's just furniture, Ray noted. People make that out to be this mystical halo moment. They're on low couches, lying on their left elbows, eating with their right hands. If you're on his right, your head is naturally by his ribs. Peter's across the U-shape and can't whisper across the room without making a scene, so he raises his eyebrows at the guy next to Jesus. Ask him. It's practical, Bennett agreed. Everything in this room is practical until it breaks your heart. Dina picked up the beat. Jesus answered, It is he to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it. So when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. Then after he took the morsel, Satan entered into him. Jesus said to him, What you are going to do, do quickly. Now no one at the table knew why he said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the money bag, Jesus was telling him, buy what we need for the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. See? Trent shouted, slapping his palm on the wood. I told you, an errand. They literally thought he was running out to buy extra pita for Passover. Trent, he had the bread in his mouth, Willa said, her voice like ice water. Jesus handed him the choice piece. In that culture, you dip the bread and give it to the honored guest. It's the highest mark of intimacy at the table. He honors the man who is selling him for 30 pieces of silver, tells him to get it over with, and Judas gets up and leaves. Dina read the last line of that paragraph with no inflection at all. So, after receiving the morsel of bread, he immediately went out, and it was night. The 4 words sat in the room like lead. Bennett looked out through the glass door into the dark yard. Just night. When he had gone out, Dina continued, her voice softer now. Jesus said, Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going you cannot come. He calls them little children, Ray said, wrapping her hands around her lukewarm water glass. He's never called them that before. It's like once Judas walked out, the air cleared, but the death got real. And then the hammer, Dina said. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Trent shook his head slowly, looking down at his empty plate. People stitch that on tea towels, love one another, like it means bring a casserole when someone's sick. It doesn't mean a casserole, Bennett said. His knuckles were white where he was gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. It means you wash the feet of the guy who is about to drop the dime on you. You give him the best piece of bread, you let him walk out into the dark to do it, and then you tell the guys left at the table, now do what I just did. Nobody answered him. The silence went on so long that the kitchen clock over the stove ticked through 2 full minutes. Dina finished the chapter without looking up from the thin paper. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus answered him, Where I am going you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward. Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus answered, Will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow till you have denied me 3 times. Dina stopped. She didn't close the Bible, she just left both palms flat on the pages, pinning them to the table. Trent let out a long, ragged exhale. Man, poor Peter. He really thought he was that guy. We all think we're that guy, Willa said. She finally let go of the thread on her sweater. We all think we'd die for him before dessert. And by breakfast we're warming our hands by the fire pretending we never heard his name. Bennett looked over at the cold skillet on the burner, the grease congealed white around the chicken bones, the unwashed plates stacked crooked in the sink. I keep thinking I should clean up, Bennett murmured. Leave it, Ray said, not moving an inch. He's still talking in chapter 14. Nobody's leaving this room yet. So they sat. Down the hill toward the highway, a semi-truck shifted gears, the low growl of its diesel engine rolling up through the dark trees and fading out into the night.